Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Hager number 1752 4x4 US4 satin brass single acting spring hinge full mortise residential weight steel base. Let's go over what all that means. So 1752 by Hager is representative of the fact that this is indeed a full mortise hinge. You can see from the swag on the hinge leaf there that when they're brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. 1752 also is a reference to a 5/8 radius corner with this specific non-template hole pattern for the screws. Non-template means that it is this. Template pattern is more like that. Non-template pattern, which you'll see in residential applications very commonly, is what some people call this zigzag pattern. Not to worry, there's a link below this video to what's called the template, where you can review all of the location of the screw holes so that you can determine if this is a proper fit before you buy it. Since we're talking about that template, there is a link, there's a table in the bottom third of it, which will give you the other part numbers as they relate to this same hinge. It becomes a 1750 if you do square corners. It's a 1751 if you do 1/4 inch radius. This is a 1752 with 5/8 radius. And 1754 if you do 1 leaf square and 1 leaf 5/8 radius. Now the 5/8 radius is very typical that you're going to see from a wood door shop. Someone who manufactures or assembles wood doors and frames or pre-hungs. 5/8 radius means it's 1.25 inch diameter router bit that they're using to quickly cut, and maybe even in a very automated fashion, the hinge preparations on both the door and frame. A 5/8 radius hinge allows the door manufacturer to not have to go back and square those corners out, which is typically a hand sort of process. Or when it's automated, it makes more complicated the manufacturing process. So 5/8 radius is real common. 1.25 inch bit, and with 1.25 inch bit, the amount of passes the tool has to do to create the hinge prep are minimal. Anyway, enough about that. You can see where all the screw holes are. Screws are included. There'd be obviously 8 of them, 8 wood screws for this. And back to the part number. This is a 4x4. That means that this hinge is 4 inch tall and 4 inch wide. Height goes first on hinges like this, while it doesn't matter because it's 4x4 so much. If it was, let's say, 4.5x4 as a spring hinge, it would definitely matter. 4.5 tall, 4 wide. Height's always first on these hinges. US4 means 2 things. It means, first of all, it's steel base, okay? And it means that it is a satin brass finish that you have on the hinge leaves. Specifications. This hinge is full mortise, as we discussed earlier, and steel base. The gauge of the hinge leaf is .097. That's 97 thousandths of an inch, typical for residential applications. Okay. The preparation of that is shallower than a typical 4x4, which is closer to 130 thousandths. So if your hinge prep is well less than 1/8 of an inch, this is what you need. If your hinge prep is heavy on 1/8 of an inch, then you need a commercial grade hinge. This is therefore classified residential weight. 8 holes includes those 9 by 1 inch flathead wood screws. Now, how many hinges do you need for a door? Hager recommends that if you have 1 spring hinge on the door, the weight of your door should not exceed 45 pounds. And yes, you can mix and match these with standard butt hinges because the vertical axis of pivoting is compatible with standard 4x4 butt hinges. If your door gets up to 70 pounds, they want 2 spring hinges, 1 butt hinge, top and middle. 90 pounds, 3 spring hinges. Now I'm a fan of all spring hinges. It's not for the obvious reason. It's more so because I've installed these, I've maintained them, I've corrected them, I've reset them, I've replaced them, specified them, and from start to finish. I find that you have a greater amount of success at not only getting the door closed, but latched as well when you have more spring hinges doing the job rather than less. Okay. The door is, you know, if it's a 3 foot by 6 foot 8 solid 20-minute particle board filled door that's on a garage, in an attached garage in a home, that's heavy. That's about 6.5 pounds per square foot generally. So if you do the math, you know, that door ends up being, you know, pushing for sure the 90-pound sort of range that you're in for these hinges. And that's a very common application. In this scenario, it being 20-minute, not only does it have to be self-closing, but it must be self-latching, which those are two requirements of a fire-rated door. Now, a door, really any door, when it opens up, you've got to overcome all of that energy of the door. It's sitting still. The spring hinge has to not only get it moving through its closing cycle, it has to overcome all of the air resistance that it will encounter. It has to overcome the friction of the latch bolt hitting the strike plate to get it latched. And when you've got less spring power on reserve compared to more, generally what ends up happening is the door will not get all the way closed and latched, or people will set the tension so high that the door will swing very quickly through the closing cycle and slam. And that's a bad condition overall for the installation of the door, especially the frame. The analogy I like to use is a tugboat. They don't go very fast, but they can pull a lot of weight. And having lots of spring power is like that tugboat. Okay? As the door comes through its closing cycle, you'll still have an ample amount of reserve stored energy in the springs to get you, to put you in a position where you don't have to have the door move excessively fast just to limp all the way into the closing cycle. But you can get it more controlled and then positively latching. Okay? That's part of it. I'm not a fan of spring hinges to close doors. I think that they should be hydraulically controlled with either surface closers overhead or even you know, floor closers. However, that's just not realistic in lots of applications. It's unrealistic to have a surface-mounted closer on, you know, an application that might be a condo entry door. There may be simply nowhere to install it. Spring hinges have their place, but allowing them to do their job that they were intended for is best off when you are for sure following the guidelines of the weight rating of the material. Sure, you can always add more, there's no question. Now, being a spring hinge, this hinge from Hager will include a Allen wrench. This is the top of the hinge. It will have the Allen wrench preparation in it. This is the bottom. It doesn't have that. So when the top of the hinge is installed, when the Allen wrench tension collar is what it's called, is installed towards the top of the door, and they can be used in either fashion, or either hand, left or right. You insert that, and you rotate it clockwise. And as you do so, you see that you reveal new additional holes. And it's into one of those new additional holes that you insert the tension pin. And that's what sets the tension on the spring hinge. About 3 holes is what they're looking at in terms of a maximum amount of tension on there. Okay. If you hear any creaking, that's bad. It's gone too far in terms of how many holes you've set, because that spring is, you know, becoming like a heliarc where it's no longer proper, and it will get kinked and can break, and they're irreparable at that point. Hager makes this hinge in all of the common finishes, your brasses, chromes, bronzes, satin, and polished. Prime coat finish as well. Other less than common finishes they can do. And their name, Hager hinge. It's synonymous with hinges, not only residential hinges like this, but commercial or architectural hinges as well. If you have any questions on the Hager 1752 US4 single-acting spring hinge or any other Hager product, please feel free to reach out to us.